That's one of the problems with charismatic religions is that charisma it spreads to everybody. I mean, you're attracting people so they'll have charismatic experiences, but then they start getting revelations that compete with yours. And there's a chance that the whole thing could splinter into 1,000 pieces, with different groups going off here and there, we're liking that person's revelation or that person's over yours. And to hold it together, okay, is the trick. Is that Joseph Smith is trying to negotiate from day one. I mean, Hiram Page is like right there in the first year.
So tell us about Hiram Page. Pretend the audience never heard of him. Tell us what happens there. That's incredible to me.
Well, Hiram Page was a brother-in-law had married one of the David Whitmer's sisters. And he's right there where the Book of Mormon is being translated.
And in fact, some of the Whitners are some of the scribes who are transcribing Joseph Smith's words. So these aren't just some random people. They're at the epicenter of the revelation of the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, sometimes they give Oliver Cowdery a rest. And John Whitmer, his handwriting has been found in the original dictated manuscript of the part that, the whatever, 40%, less than 40%.
I think it's 28% survives according to Rosskousen.
28%, that sounds right.
Yeah.
That has survived.
Yeah.
And so we know that part was done at that time during the month of June.
I want to point out something here, which blows my mind, right?
Yeah.
So I think some people who first become acquainted with the story of Joseph Smith will say, well, the whole thing's made up, right? He didn't sit there dictating a book to people, but we actually have the manuscript in which they copied down his words, and it's very clear it was a dictation.
Yes, and it's oral, and there's mistakes in it that are not visual.
Right, exactly. That's incredible. That we would have 28%, or maybe it's a little bit more now with multispectral imaging of being able to read 28% of the original manuscript.
Yeah,
that is I wish we had 28% of the original copy. I wish we had 1% of the original copy of the Book of Jeremiah, which by the way, is described as the same thing. They said to Baruch the son of Neriah, how was this written? He said, Jeremiah would speak and I would write. Right, so we have an interesting parallel there. Jeremiah wasn't looking into a hat, presumably, but that's a whole separate story. It's a dictation. So, all right. So Hiram Page, he's at the epicenter.
Yeah, they're not so sure Joseph Smith is the one and only prophet, the leader. There's no such thing yet. He's just a translator. So, and he's gotten some revelations, but aren't we all supposed to get revelations, And
didn't Joseph Smith himself say that everyone's supposed to have the Holy Spirit or something, or was there something like that?
Oh yeah, it's supposed to be a restoration of the spiritual gifts, tongues, prophecy. In their meetings, they stand up and prophesy, or speak in tongues and see visions. They're a charismatic, very charismatic group. A little, not so much like the Mormons are today. It's all been institutionalized. And that's part of what my next book that's coming out in a few months.
Oh, wow. Yeah. What's the book called? Do we have a preview?
It's the middle years. It's the Joseph Smith Charisma Under Pressure.
Wow. Okay.
Charisma Under Pressure. So, it's working off of Max Weber's, From Charisma to Institution is one of his studies. He's a sociologist at the turn from the 19th to the 20th century. And he wrote about how charismatic groups, and it's not only religious charismatic groups, it's any kind of group that has a leader that's based on personality and, the draw of the personality, kind of a thing. It could be a business even, But all groups, these charismatic groups have this instability built into it, and it tries to seek this homeostasis, equilibrium. And how does it do that? And also be dealing with the problem of unfulfilled prophecy. How do you overcome that? And like the early Christians. And it eventually becomes institutionalized, where charisma doesn't rest in the personality of the leader. It rests in the office. Anybody inherits the office, has that charisma of the office, and it has this tendency to balance itself. So Joseph Smith, one of his genius parts is that he was able to build an institution that was, self-preserving. And by the time the unfulfilled prophecy came around, the institution was strong enough to survive it. That's it in the nutshell.
That's really interesting. So charisma, and by charisma, what you mean here, I think, and what I definitely mean, is that they believed that they were actually having these spiritual revelations, experiences. I wondered before I studied this, why would anybody believe something as outlandish as the Book of Mormon? And the answer from speaking to Mormons is, well, I prayed about it and it was revealed to me that it's true. And why don't you pray about it, Nehemia, and see if God or Jesus or whatever gives you a testimony that it's true. So that's a charismatic experience.
Yes.
Right? And so the very thing that makes Mormons such devout believers, and certainly in the early days, is a danger, because now you have competing voices. Maybe the Spirit doesn't just tell me that the Book of Mormon is true. Maybe it tells me that, hey, it's not supposed to be Independence, Missouri. It's supposed to be Nauvoo, Illinois, or Utah, or someplace like that, right? So that brings us to Hiram Page. So Hiram Page is in the home of the Whitmers, and what happens?
Well, he starts getting revelations. The people want to know, where is this Zion? Is it here in
so that exact thing.
Is it here in Fayette? Are we in the Holy Land? Is this part of the Promised Land right here? And Hiram Page starts getting these revelations through a stone. And he gets a ream of them, basic, choir, they call it a ream, a lot.
So people are writing down what he says. He's not just getting revelations.
Yeah, okay. Just like Joseph Smith. And
wow.
And he locates Zion. It appears from the descriptions anyway, that right there. And so Joseph Smith gets a counter revelation accusing or labeling Hiram Page's revelations as satanic. And
wow.
These are false revelations, and they're not to follow these. And it has not been revealed where Zion shall be. At this point, that's what it declared. Nobody knew where Zion was.
Okay.
So, and it would be shortly. So I interpret that as they had this anxiety, this need for the mysteries. They wanted the mysteries solved. They wanted somebody to get revelations about these things, and Joseph Smith wasn't delivering fast enough, and this was his cue. This was his cue to step it up a little bit,
So this is important. This is real. I think this is one of the pivotal events in the history of the early church, because it's not just Hiram Page is having Satan reveal stuff to him, or whatever the terminology is. But then they have an outcome from this. Tell us about that, where they establish there's only one person who's allowed to be a revelator, right? I mean, isn't that something that comes out of this?
Yeah. So they take Hiram Page's stone and they grind it up according to tradition. They ground it up and destroyed his revelations.
And Hiram Page isn't resisting this. He accepts this, right?
And he was having a lot of influence on the Whitmers and Oliver Cowdery. So they're all not clear on Well, what is going on here is Joseph Smith. We're supposed to follow Joseph Smith and Joseph Smith only. Well, Joseph Smith gets a revelation more or less saying, yes, if there's to be any revelations given, it will be given through Joseph Smith.
Wow, that's convenient. For
That's
him.
what they do. They call it a revelation of convenience. Yeah. So
well, who calls it that?
It's just a term that they throw around.
Oh, okay. Not the Mormons though, right? They would say it's a true revelation, right?
Yeah.
Or I'm asking.
Right.
Okay. Look, and so the result of this is not only does this silence Hiram Page, it prevents anybody else from challenging his authority, right?
Not exactly.
Oh, okay. So
not exactly. It's so another let's say challenger came about when he moved to Ohio the next year. A woman we know as Hubble.
Okay.
This woman started getting revelations, and they had to get another revelation about and saying that basically the same thing that only Joseph Smith is to get revelations for the church.
Okay. Does Hiram Page accept Joseph Smith's revelation and say, okay, I was wrong, it was Satan? Do we know if Hubble accepted it?
Not much is known about her